Hi, I'm Blair. I never thought I'd be fighting for the roof over my head, especially not against family. My husband Mark and I had saved for years to buy our modest 3-bedroom in the suburbs. We'd been living there happily for 2 years when his parents, Judith and Howard, announced they were coming for an extended visit. How long is extended exactly? I asked Mark while unpacking groceries, trying to keep my voice casual. His parents had visited before, but never for more than a weekend. Mark shrugged, focusing intently on arranging apples in the fruit bowl. Mom mentioned a month, maybe 2. Dad's retiring, and they want to spend some quality time with us before their big Europe trip. 2 months? Mark, that's not a visit, that's practically moving in. I set down the cereal box I was holding. And why didn't you discuss this with me first? Come on, Blair, they're family. Mark's voice took on that slightly defensive tone it always did when discussing his parents. What was I supposed to say? Sorry, my wife might not want you around. That's not fair. The doorbell rang, interrupting our conversation. Mark practically sprinted to answer it. Perfect timing as always, I muttered, plastering on my welcome smile. Blair, darling. Judith's perfume reached me before she did, enveloping me in a cloud of expensive floral notes as she air-kissed both my cheeks. The house looks cozy. You've done what you could with the space, I suppose. Thanks, Judith. We like it. Howard was already directing Mark about their luggage. These go in the master bedroom, son. I stepped forward. Actually, we've prepared the guest room for you. It gets wonderful morning light. Judith exchanged a look with Howard. Oh, we couldn't possibly sleep in that tiny space for 2 months. Our backs would never survive that guest bed. Mom? Dad? We can't give up our bedroom, Mark said, though his voice lacked conviction. Nonsense, Howard boomed, clapping Mark on the shoulder. Your mother needs her space. Besides, it's only temporary. The first week was awkward but manageable. By week 3, Judith had rearranged my kitchen, replaced our living room curtains, and started receiving mail at our address. Have you noticed your mother-in-law is redecorating? My best friend Layla asked during our coffee date. She introduced herself to Mrs. Peterson next door as the lady of the house. I nearly choked on my latte. She what? Layla nodded, leaning forward. And yesterday I saw them measuring your front yard. Howard was talking about improving the landscaping to increase property values. That's concerning, I admitted. Mark says I'm being paranoid, but something feels off. They keep talking about family investments and how the house would be perfect once they make some changes. What exactly did Mark inherit when his grandmother died last year? Layla asked suddenly. Just some family heirlooms and a modest amount of money. Why? Blair, Layla's voice dropped. I think you need to check your property records. Now. That evening, I logged into the county records website while Mark was helping his father in the garage. What I found made my blood run cold. Mark! I called, my voice shaking. You need to see this right now. He came running, alarmed by my tone. What's wrong? I turned the laptop toward him. There's a quitclaim deed filed 3 days ago. Your parents are trying to add their names to our house title. They forged your signature. That's impossible, Mark stammered, staring at the screen. There must be some mistake. The only mistake is thinking your parents wouldn't try to steal our house, I said, pointing to the document. Look at the signature. It's supposed to be yours, but it's obviously forged. Mark sat heavily on the couch. Maybe they were trying to help somehow? A tax thing or estate planning? By secretly putting their names on our deed? Without asking? I closed the laptop. Mark, we need to talk to them directly. Now. We found them in the kitchen, Judith chopping vegetables while Howard reviewed what looked suspiciously like renovation estimates. Mom, Dad, Mark began awkwardly. We need to discuss something important. Judith didn't look up. Dinner's almost ready, dear. Can it wait? No, it can't, I said firmly. We found the quitclaim deed you filed adding your names to our house title. The knife paused mid-chop. Howard carefully set down his papers. Well, we were going to discuss that with you this weekend. Judith said, wiping her hands on a towel. It's just a formality, really. A formality. My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. You forged Mark's signature. Howard cleared his throat. Now, Blair, let's not get dramatic. This house is a family investment. What are you talking about? We bought this house. With our money, I said. Using the down payment money from Mark's grandmother, Judith countered smoothly. Family money. That was my inheritance, Mark said. Given to me, not to you. But it was family money, Howard insisted. And in our family, property stays protected through family stewardship. It's practically family law. Family law? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. That's not a real thing. You can't just make up laws. You wouldn't understand, Blair, Judith said dismissively. You're not blood family. I turned to Mark, waiting for him to defend me. His silence was deafening. This is our house, I finally said, and we need you to remove your names from that deed immediately. Or what? Howard's voice hardened. Mark knows where his loyalties should lie. The next morning, I called a real estate attorney while Mark was in the shower. Miss Rivera, I'm Blair Wilson. I need help with a property dispute, I explained to the lawyer. What kind of dispute? Her voice was crisp, professional. My in-laws fraudulently added themselves to our property deed by forging my husband's signature. That's a serious allegation. Do you have evidence? The signature doesn't match any of his legal documents. Plus, they've admitted their intentions to us. Is your husband aware you're calling me? I hesitated. He knows there's a problem, but he's conflicted. They're his parents. I understand. Family property disputes are challenging. Can you come in tomorrow? Bring your original deed and any communication you have about this situation. After hanging up, I called Layla. The attorney can see me tomorrow. Will you come with me? Mark's being... Mark? Of course. And I've been asking around. Your in-laws apparently pulled something similar with Mark's cousin's condo 3 years ago. What happened? The cousin backed down. They now co-own the property. That's not happening here, I said firmly. This is our home. I spent the afternoon gathering documents while avoiding Judith's prying questions. That evening, Howard cornered me in the hallway. Blair, a word? His tone was friendly, but his eyes were cold. Judith and I have been talking. This arrangement isn't working for anyone. Which arrangement? You moving in uninvited or trying to steal our house? Now, no need for hostility. He lowered his voice. We think it would be best if you and Mark moved out temporarily while we renovate. Excuse me? Just for 6 months or so. The house needs substantial work to reach its potential. We're prepared to cover the costs, of course. This is our house. We're not going anywhere. Well, Howard straightened, dropping all pretense of friendliness. Legally, we now have equal claim to this property. By family law, that gives us decision-making authority. There is no such thing as family law overriding actual property law, I said through gritted teeth. We'll see about that. Howard's smile didn't reach his eyes. Mark has always respected our guidance. I suggest you do the same. The next morning, I returned from my meeting with Miss Rivera, the real estate attorney, with Layla beside me for moral support. I found Mark, Judith, and Howard in our living room with a middle-aged man in an expensive suit. Blair? Howard stood, gesturing to the stranger. This is Calvin Pierce, our family attorney. We were just discussing the property situation. The property situation, I repeated slowly, setting down my purse. You mean your attempt to steal our house? Now, Blair, Judith tutted. Such dramatic language. Calvin cleared his throat. Mrs. Wilson, I understand you're upset, but this is a family matter that... It absolutely is not, I interrupted. And you should know that forging signatures on property documents is a felony in this state. No one has forged anything, Howard insisted. Mark authorized us to handle the paperwork. I turned to Mark. Did you? Mark's eyes darted between me and his parents. I didn't specifically authorize this document, but we had talked about estate planning. So that's a no, I cut in. Mark, they forged your signature. That's fraud. Miss Wilson, Calvin interjected. The Wilson family has certain traditions regarding property management that… Stop. I held up my hand. I just met with a real estate attorney who specializes in property fraud. She's already filing to invalidate the quitclaim deed based on the forged signature. You did what? Mark's voice rose in alarm. I protected our home, I replied evenly. Something you should have done. Blair, you had no right to involve outsiders in family business, Judith snapped. And you had no right to forge documents to steal our house? Howard stood, face reddening. This house was purchased with family money. By family law? There is no such thing as family law that supersedes actual law, I shouted. You made that up. How dare you? Judith gasped. Mark, are you going to let her speak to us this way? Mark looked trapped. Mom, Dad, maybe we should all calm down and… No, Mark, I said firmly. There's nothing to discuss. They committed fraud. They need to leave. We're not going anywhere, Howard declared. This house belongs to the Wilson family and we're staying. Fine. I pulled out my phone. Then I'm calling the police to report the fraud and request removal of trespassers. You wouldn't dare, Judith hissed. Try me. Mark! Howard turned to his son. Control your wife. Dad, that's not… Mark knows where his loyalties lie, Judith said smugly. Don't you, dear? I looked at my husband, waiting. Mark ran his hands through his hair. I can't choose between… You already have, I said quietly. By your silence. Calvin, looking increasingly uncomfortable, gathered his papers. Perhaps I should leave you all to discuss this as a family. There's nothing to discuss, I said. I've already initiated legal proceedings. The forged deed will be invalidated, and if you don't leave voluntarily, I'll pursue criminal charges for the forgery. Howard surged toward me, finger pointing. Listen here, you ungrateful. Don't you dare threaten my client, came a sharp voice from the doorway. Layla had returned with Miss Rivera, who stepped into the room, professional and imposing in her tailored suit. And you are? Calvin asked. Maria Rivera, real estate attorney. I've already filed an emergency petition to invalidate the fraudulent deed. She turned to Howard and Judith. I strongly advise you to vacate this property immediately and withdraw your claim, or my client will pursue both civil and criminal remedies. This is absurd, Howard blustered. Mark, tell them! All eyes turned to Mark, who looked utterly miserable. Dad, he finally said, you forged my signature. You can't do that. We did it for you, Judith cried, to protect your inheritance. By stealing our house? I asked incredulously. How does that make sense? You've never understood our family, Judith spat. Mark married beneath him and we were trying to protect… That's enough, Mom, Mark interrupted, his voice stronger now. You and Dad need to leave. Today. Howard's face contorted with rage. If you choose her over your own blood, you're no son of mine. He grabbed a nearby vase, a wedding gift, and hurled it against the wall, where it shattered spectacularly. 3 weeks later, I sat in Miss Rivera's office reviewing paperwork. The fraudulent deed had been invalidated, and we'd filed a restraining order against Howard and Judith after Howard's outburst. The prosecutor has agreed to offer a plea deal, Miss Rivera explained. Since your in-laws have no prior criminal record, they'll likely get probation for the forgery charges if they plead guilty. And they've agreed to this? I asked, surprised. Their attorney strongly advised it. The evidence is irrefutable, and they'd face significant jail time otherwise. Mark shifted uncomfortably beside me. Will this be public? Court records are public, yes, Miss Rivera confirmed. But that's the consequence of their actions, not yours. Outside the office, Mark and I walked silently to our car. I'm sorry, he finally said. I should have stood up to them sooner. Yes, you should have, I agreed, not quite ready to absolve him. My whole life, they've been controlling. But I never imagined they'd go this far. What happens now? With your relationship with them? Mark sighed. I don't know. They've barely spoken to me since they moved out, except through their lawyer. Do you regret choosing our home over them? I asked directly. No, Mark said, surprising me with his firmness. I regret not seeing them clearly sooner. A week later, as we repainted our bedroom, reclaiming our space, the doorbell rang. Mark answered while I continued rolling pale blue paint over Judith's chosen burgundy. Blair? Mark called, his voice tense. It's my parents. I set down the roller and went to the living room. Judith and Howard stood awkwardly by the door, looking smaller somehow. What are you doing here? I asked. The restraining order has been temporarily lifted for this visit, Howard said stiffly. Our lawyer arranged it. We've come to apologize, Judith said, though the words seemed painful for her. Really? I crossed my arms, skeptical. The prosecutor made it a condition of our plea deal, Howard admitted. But also, we've had time to reflect. We were wrong, Judith said. The house is yours. We've signed paperwork relinquishing any claim. And the family law excuse? I prompted. Howard had the grace to look embarrassed. A tradition we exaggerated. You lied, I corrected, and tried to steal our home. We thought we were protecting family assets, Judith insisted. Mark is our only child, and we wanted to control him, I finished. As you always have. Mark stepped forward. Mom, Dad, I appreciate you coming to apologize, but what you did can't be undone with words. We're family, Howard said desperately. Surely we can move past this? Start fresh? I looked at Mark, letting him take the lead. No, he said firmly. We can't. You violated our trust in the most fundamental way. You committed fraud, tried to steal our home, and threatened my wife. But we're your parents, Judith's voice broke. You can't just cut us off. I'm not cutting you off, Mark explained. I'm establishing boundaries. We'll revisit our relationship after your probation, provided you get counseling. Counseling? Howard scoffed. We don't need... Those are our terms, Mark interrupted. Take them or leave them. After they left, looking shell-shocked, I turned to Mark. Are you okay? No, he admitted. But I will be. We will be. Later that evening, Layla and her husband joined us for dinner, along with my brother Sam, who had flown in to support us. To Blair, Layla raised her glass. Who taught us all that family law means nothing without actual law behind it? Everyone laughed, the tension of the past months finally beginning to ease. So what happens next? Sam asked. Will they actually respect your boundaries? Mark shrugged. I don't know, but for the first time, I'm not responsible for their choices. And our house is officially, legally just ours again, I added. No forged documents, no false claims. Would you have really pressed criminal charges? Layla asked. In a heartbeat, I confirmed. Some lines can't be uncrossed. As our friends departed and Mark and I stood in our reclaimed home, he took my hand. Thank you, he said quietly, for fighting for us when I couldn't. That's what real family does, I replied. They protect each other, not use made-up family laws to control and manipulate. Do you think we'll ever fully trust them again? Mark asked. I considered the question seriously. What do you think? Could you ever look at a property document with their names on it and not wonder about their true intentions? That's my question for you too. How far would you go to protect your home from those who claimed to be family? Would you press charges against relatives who betrayed your trust? Let me know in the comments.